So this has been one of my more anticipated episodes of the week, and it absolutely delivered, and it equally made me just as excited as I was walking into this episode as I now am walking into next week's episode. This endgame that they clearly have been establishing for a couple of weeks now is really getting into the craziness that I would like to see, while without a doubt giving me the main thing I was hoping to see more of before we say goodbye, potentially forever in the anime, or until we get a season 2, and that is the true Akari, because ever since that reveal, I think many of us have been eager to see what would be the next moment that would make her drop her fake guard and clue back into her real personality. And the castle seemed like a likely scenario. It just didn't go the way I think many of us were assuming it would, because the idea of these two coming into contact felt like it had to happen. It would be more shocking if it didn't happen than if it did. But the fact that there was no hostility initially, like the fact that you have Akari recognizing shit is different. It's not even just that one time with the light and the bow, it's that things keep happening and it never happened before, and she's wording it in such a way that it makes it seem like she's been doing this hundreds if not thousands of times. So for it to change, it's not like it's just a couple of times that she's re-looped this scenario. It's that she's done it so much that the fact that she never talked to me, or this never happened, and the fact that that's such a shocking revelation, it very much feels like the wheels coming off of her hands, as if she can't tell, is someone taking control of this situation that's leading me to where I want to go, or are they leading me off a cliff that I won't be able to recover from? And that's pretty exciting for someone who has an ability that normally would make it feel like they're in control. Even if they screw up, you know what, they'll redo it, things will be fine. But the fact that there's this audible fear of, I don't know why things are changing, and it makes me terrified for the future is a pretty cool addition to an already pretty incredible story. But the fact that, she wasn't getting attacked, she wasn't kidnapped, I mean, kidnapping seemed like the likely scenario, right? I think that's what a majority of us were assuming would happen. If it wasn't Akari, it would be Menno, some Momo maybe. And the fact that Momo ended up getting poisoned, but didn't get kidnapped. She actually was taken to safety. Hell, they literally have the police there ready to bust down the doors. Like, everything that should be the predictable element swept under the rug once again. And that's one of the things that makes the show so great, is that on paper and at surface value, you can basically write what most light novel manga authors would create for a scene like this. Menno and Akari come to the castle. One of them drinks something they shouldn't. They end up getting kidnapped. Then there's a rescue mission. Instead, the true Akari comes out to play, doesn't get kidnapped. In fact, she then counters her by freezing the entire goon squad, and the fact that they're going to have seemingly a pleasant conversation, if only temporarily, is pretty crazy given the fact that the conflict in this episode came from left field with the princess. Like, what the hell? Like, you really can't predict this show in the slightest. And don't get me wrong, I've criticized shows before for just being unpredictable for the sake of being unpredictable, but what makes this so great is that it just feels like it has a coding that is generic at face value, yet everything about the actual substance with the writing and production is really well done, that it's actually creating one hell of a story. And in terms of the action, like I mentioned, great fight. I know last week there was some mixed responses with the reuse of still frames and stuff like that, and I even saw some people question, we know we're dealing with time, is there any time manipulation? I imagine it was probably just lackluster production for last week. But in terms of this week, you could tell there was some polish to this one. The refinement in the battle was really cool because she had to keep up her identity. She was trying to, make sure her identity wasn't exposed. And the fact that you get to see a little bit of all the moves we've seen up until this point, all in one smooth battle, not against your general bandits, but against someone who's very skilled and probably could cut off a head if she really wanted to. And I really like the idea of her dagger and how she incorporates it into fights, like the fact that there's this illusion magic that she'll use, so people will think she still has it when in fact it's in front of her. I thought they did probably one of the most creative things that they've done with magic in this episode, which is she typically uses flames, and a lot of times she uses like wind and bubbles, stuff like that, like stuff that can propel or shock or push away. And I love the fact that when she launches this almost like volcanic flame strike, because she made the illusion, she can then use the gust and throw it right back into her face as you have this pillar of flame launch up. Really cool addition. I love how, it's not like she's winning through brute strength. Based on everything that we know, about these two, it does seem like, the princess is without a doubt technically stronger, but the skill and the maneuverability of someone like Menno really gave her the edge and allowed her to get out of a situation most would either get captured or killed by. And that was really cool to me because the action in this episode I thought would have been on, this crazy bitch's side, but in fact it came from a character I've really started to really enjoy, and her kind of like subtle, like snarky remarks about how I'm going to have to tease Momo about this in the, later on in the day. And then to see the Iron Maiden, this torture device, man, just to see that little girl, that also didn't go in the direction I thought, because I was like, oh, okay, a lot of people thinking the girl's still alive and like she'd continue to be alive. And then Momo was like, she's probably not going to make it. And that was even before the explosion happened. And then she got a spike to the side, which ended up poisoning her. It just feels like this show wants to avoid every like typical easy way out that any other author would usually use, because if you're going to have a poison spike go into a character, naturally you're going to write it, oh, that's a very easy way to write her getting kidnapped and then I can force a character to come get me. But instead, the reason someone like Menno is going to have to go get Akari isn't because of like that typical kidnapping plotline, but in fact, the girl who she thinks is an airhead, a child, an idiot, actually was so in control that she purposely went there, which is a really cool addition in my opinion. Like visually, I thought this was a very good looking episode, some great animation, especially with the dynamic camera angles and the way bodies would bend around during that action scene. And in terms of just conversations, I mean, if looks can kill, some of the times the glares you get in this show, they just send a shiver up your spine. And I feel like that's why I love looking at this show, is that visually, a lot of the plot points before they start getting into the thick of it, it just feels like it's your average run-of-the-mill show. But in fact, I think it's one of the stronger shows of the season. And it's just great to see that everything that could be infuriating continues to be avoided. Like, the fact of the matter is, you could easily have someone like Menno blindly believe still in this church and things like that. But the fact that they even bring up in this episode that the woman that she's working with, she had her own doubts about her. It's the only reason she's trusting her right now is based on the interaction she's recently had. And the fact that you didn't just turn her into another crazy old bishop who's, doing things for selfish reasons. They continue to make a story stand on its own two legs as something that you just wish more stories would try the originality approach, because this show is honestly screaming of it. Like, this feels like the Executioner and her way of life. It doesn't feel like, oh, you're just trying to copy a ReZero time mechanic or things like that. No, this show's doing its own thing, and that's why I really hope it gets a second season. But of course, thoughts as always on what you thought of this episode, whether if you're a fan of that source or if you're an anime original, let me know what you're feeling down below. Leave a like if you enjoyed and subscribe if you're new around here. Till next time, everyone, please take care and have a good one.